This video is brought to you by Incognito. This is Ascent Milwaukee, a gorgeous combo luxury apartment and retail space. But if you look closely, you might notice something special about this building. Figured it out yet? Well, it's made out of wood. That's right, aside from a concrete garage and elevator shafts, this 25-story tall building is made almost entirely from timber, making it the tallest mass timber building in the world. It might not hold on to that title for long though, as mass timber is rapidly growing in popularity due to a host of benefits, including sustainability. But how are wooden skyscrapers possible? And isn't it a little foolish to make a timber tower when a little thing called fire exists? I'm Matt Ferrell. Welcome to Undecided. No bones about it, Ascent is an architectural achievement, and though it's the tallest mass timber building, competitors for the title seem to be popping up almost everywhere. So what techniques have made wooden skyscrapers possible, and why are they gaining popularity now? Well, starting in the 1980s, we developed a handful of techniques that combined lumber in new and exciting ways, making it stronger than the sum of its parts. Collectively known as engineered wood or composite lumber products, these materials first gained popularity in the 1990s. But with the climate concerns only growing, the popularity of mass timber buildings has started to reach a kind of critical mass. There are a lot of variations on these mass timber materials, and we're still developing new techniques. So I'll just touch on a few to give you an idea of how they've allowed us to push wooden structures to new heights. Literally. First up is cross-laminated timber, or CLT, which is made by gluing sheets of lumber together at right angles. Normally wood is strongest along the grain, so by alternating the direction of the grain, CLT is strong all over. Wood is typically stronger in tension than compression, and by varying the direction of the boards, some sections of wood are in tension at all times. Now this makes it ideal for panelized jobs, the kind of stuff you'd ordinarily have concrete and rebar for, like large flat expanses like floors and walls. But CLT is lighter and stronger than concrete or even steel. Then there's glue laminated timber or glue lam, which is essentially CLT but all the grain runs in the same direction. This might make it seem inferior at first, but this means it excels at applications where you only need strength along a single axis. Think of support pillars and beams. It's still incredibly strong, and glue lam is 1/6 the weight of concrete and 1/10 the weight of steel, but it's been proven to have higher resistance to lateral torsional buckling than steel. Engineered lumber isn't limited to just these two types, but these are the big ones that you need to know about. Now this is all very interesting, but to paraphrase Dr. Ian Malcolm, just because we can doesn't mean we should. Why construct buildings out of wood when we've done just fine with concrete and steel? Well, mass timber buildings actually have surprising environmental benefits. Steel and concrete are responsible for a lot of carbon emissions. Every ton of steel produced in 2018 emitted a whopping 1.85 tons of carbon on average. Though pound for pound, the concrete industry produces less carbon than steel, just 0.92 pounds of CO2 per pound of cement. That's still a lot of carbon, but it's the most popular building material on Earth. And speaking more broadly, the building and construction sector alone accounted for 36% of final energy use and 39% of energy and process-related CO2 emissions in 2018. But logging a bunch of forests for their timber doesn't sound like it's going to help with the climate. And while that could be true, there's nuance to it. So let's look at Norway. Their forestry policies have made them a world leader in mass timber buildings. When I spoke to Jason Korb on my Still to Be Determined podcast, he's the principal architect at Korb & Associates Architects, who designed the Ascent building in Milwaukee. He had this to say about how the trees were sourced.
At Ascent, which we're going to be talking about, our structural engineer estimates that even without planting new trees to replace the ones that are harvested, which they do, by the way, the wood fiber in that building will be replaced by natural growth, in our case, in North American forests. The analysis was done in approximately 25 minutes. And again, That's without planting any new trees. And the folks that supply this timber, for every one they take, they plant 2 or 3 because they own their own forest. It's in their interest to keep them healthy.
The environmental benefits seem pretty clear. Just 1 cubic meter of glue lam timber stores about 700 kilograms of carbon dioxide, which is absolutely phenomenal. On top of the carbon capture, lumber is less energy intensive to make than cement or steel, which means even less carbon emissions. In fact, it's estimated that building a city out of mass timber could save us 106 billion tons of CO2. And if we go about it sustainably, which again might be easier said than done, a push for more wooden buildings could mean a push for more forests, which obviously has a lot of other benefits to offer. But isn't building a tall structure out of wood just a massive fire hazard? Well, before getting into that potential hazard, there's another one that can be really frustrating, and that's your personal information getting leaked or sold online. Today's sponsor, Incognito, can help you with that. I've mentioned this before, but I signed up for a newsletter from a small online retailer, and after I did, I saw a major increase in the number of promotional emails I was receiving from companies I've never heard of. And that's because they sold my information to a data broker. And I'm sure you've experienced it too. Incognito can help you with this. We have the right to request that data brokers delete our information, but it takes a lot of time and effort. I signed up for Incognito, gave them the legal right to work on my behalf, and then just sat back and relaxed. You'll see updates on your account for which data brokers they've sent legal requests to and which ones have complied. It couldn't be easier. I've been letting Incognito stay on top of this for me for quite a while now, and I'm very happy with the results. They're still staying on top of it for me today, and I've noticed the difference. If you want to take back some of the control around who has access to your personal information, give Incognito a try. The first 100 people to use the code Undecided at the link below will get 60% off Incognito. Thanks to Incognito and to all of you for supporting the channel. So back to the question, isn't building a tall structure out of wood just a massive fire hazard? Well, surprisingly, no, as long as it's done right. Timber does of course burn, but at a very predictable rate and in a very predictable fashion. For comparison, steel tends to warp and buckle in weird ways around 1300 degrees Fahrenheit or about 700 degrees Celsius. But this can occur at temperatures as low as 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and concrete can start explosively spalling at just 390 degrees Fahrenheit or about 200 degrees Celsius. In contrast, timber's predictability means buildings can be reliably engineered to stay standing for long periods of time. We can even boost this durability with engineering tricks like flame retardant coatings or sacrificial layers of timber that the fire has to chew through before it gets to the structural components. In testing, CLT retained its structural integrity while on fire for about 2 hours, while Ascent is rated for 3 hours. This puts it on par with concrete and steel as per the international codes, and gives people plenty of time to escape and gives emergency services a reliable relative safety window to enter the building, help evacuate it, and put the fires out. And cooler yet, it's possible for wood to fireproof itself.
The timber sections in mass timber buildings in Ascent are up to over 40 inches in depth. And so basically, imagine you're camping and you throw a gigantic log on the campfire. It doesn't burn. I mean, it's there in the morning when you wake up. And so what happens is when you get sections of wood that are that large, unless they're subjected to, spectacular levels of energy, the outer layer of that wood chars, and the char layer prohibits the flow of oxygen into the center of the member, and the wood basically fireproofs itself. And that's been proven in test after test.
Factors like airflow and other flammable materials present will affect that, but this is proven in testing.
What they found was that they're burning this thing in a chamber for 3 hours. The exterior of the member is at 1200 degrees, but in the center, it's still 75 degrees. That's how well the protective layer works.
Another benefit of timber buildings is their speed and ease of their construction. Architects can construct a 3D blueprint of a building in modeling software, allowing pieces of engineered wood to be machine cut to precisely the right size before they're transported to a building site. As they're only ordering exactly what they need, this method cuts down on waste, and it's seen as a way of risk-proofing the construction process. My own house was actually built in a very similar way. And since we've measured twice and cut once, so to speak, the actual construction process becomes a relatively simple matter of just putting those pieces together, kind of like Lego. Because wood is lighter and easier to work with than concrete or steel, most of the work can be completed quickly with just a small team and a few power tools. Together, these features mean that each floor in a mass timber building can be completed in as little as 5 days. That's 20% to 50% faster than traditional methods, depending on who you ask.
You also gain great efficiencies in construction speed because it's all prefabricated, and other benefits. So there's carbon capture, there's speed, there's carbon emissions during construction. For example, we saved thousands of truck trips by concrete mixing trucks to the job site as opposed to a concrete building. In Ascent, the timber structure is 19 stories tall. It was delivered by one truck and one driver, just going back and forth between our project site and the port of Milwaukee, where the timber was staged.
The prefab focus model does have a couple of weaknesses though. Returning to the Lego analogy, if a piece that you need breaks or gets lost, there isn't a backup waiting to go. You also can't make one from scratch on site. This custom part has to be rebuilt, which will take additional time and money. And shipping stuff, especially stuff as big and heavy as construction materials, comes with a hefty financial and environmental cost. This also means that timber buildings probably aren't going to be everywhere. Regions without locally available, sustainable sources of wood will find the shipping and fabrication costs outweigh timber buildings' potential financial and environmental benefits. Engineered lumber techniques are still in their infancy, and though the price has come down, for now they're still around 26% more expensive than the old standbys. Though it's also possible for timber to be financially competitive, mostly due to the time and labor savings. And according to some researchers, the availability of lumber does mean the capital costs are 4.2% cheaper for mass timber buildings than concrete and steel.
It's interesting. The material, at least in 2020 or even today, in most markets costs more. So the cost premium is easy to quantify. Concrete costs $35 a square foot, timber costs $40. You add that up across hundreds of thousands of square feet, that's a big number. But there are savings that are a little more difficult to quantify. For instance, Ascent is built on poor soils, which means that we had to drive steel piles, up to 180 feet into the ground. The pile material is huge steel pipes filled with concrete. Because the timber is so much lighter than concrete, we had to drive approximately 100 fewer piles than we would have if it was a concrete building. We saved a month on schedule because of that, in addition to the cost of the piles and saving the environmental impact of those piles. Another example is if this was a concrete building, on the day they were pouring a deck, they would have 30 to 40 workers on the deck. In a timber building, we have 8 to 10.
And the cost should continue to fall as mass timber techniques and materials become more common.
If we were to design this building in 2023, it would not be built the way it was built in 2020 because the technology is advancing so fast that things that we had to do to connect pieces, for instance, in 2020, new connections have been designed and tested since then that will cost much less money, and they will make this technology more widely available.
While the benefits of mass timber buildings have yet to be conclusively proven, their promise, plus the admittedly very cool aesthetic, has been more than enough to entice several groups into greenlighting structures like Ascent Milwaukee all around the globe. Scandinavia is leading the wooden charge here, helped in part by their massive spruce and pine forests and long history of forestry. This has led to some stunning timber or hybrid concrete timber buildings like SR Bank's headquarters in Stavanger and the Kilden Performing Arts Center in Kristiansand. The crowning jewel, though, is arguably the Mjøstarna. Found in Brumunddal, the Mjøstarna is a combo hotel and apartment building. At 280 feet tall, it was, until Ascent's completion, the tallest mass timber building in the world. It was so tall, in fact, that the architects had to add some cement to the upper floors to stop it from swaying in the wind. And at a price tag of $113 million, it wasn't cheap. But the building is gorgeous and has become a tourist attraction in its own right. And if the calculations are to be believed, it's sequestering over 2,000 tons of carbon dioxide. Now, there are even more timber buildings on the horizon, with almost too many to list. The most ambitious of all is Sumitomo Forestry in Japan, which has proposed a 70-story tall tower composed of 90% wood. If completed as planned, this will be far and away the tallest mass timber building in the world, and will feature several large balconies for plants, giving it a very organic feel. It's important to remember that mass timber is an engineered material, not simply logs or twisted boards from the home improvement store. And while there may be some threat of fire, the mass timber structures are expected to perform comparably with steel and concrete structures. And furthermore, the city fires of over a century ago also occurred when open flames in buildings were far more common, like candles for lighting, indoor smoking, wood stoves for heat. You get the idea. So is mass timber the way forward? Will the environmental benefits encourage more and better forestry, as they've done in Norway? Or will the increased demand for mass timber lead us to plunder our forests? These are serious questions, and there doesn't seem to be a clear-cut answer, at least at the moment. Still, quicker, quieter construction and better for the environment is an enticing proposition and one that's well worth exploring. Be sure to check out my full interview with Jason on my Still To Be Determined podcast. So what do you think? Jump in the comments and let me know. And thanks to all my patrons who get ad-free versions of every single video. And welcome to new producer Brian Veloso. And thanks to all of you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.